Welcome to the show. We're really doing it big this week. Today's guest is legendary Canadian vocal coach Tom Oliver of Voice Concepts. Tom has taught voice to many very renowned singers from all over the world for almost 40 years. His knowledge and methods work, and his passion for teaching is magnetic. He's always present and very excited to get you on the right path. This is a shorter one, but I gotta say it took me a while to edit because I kept taking breaks to work on vocal exercises. Even just hearing Tom talk about what's possible and how to get there always inspires me to get to work on my voice. We actually get into some vocal exercises later in the episode, so feel free to sing along and brush off that pandemic rust with me. You'll be amazed at how much just 10 minutes of focused experimenting can improve your pitch, agility, tonal quality, range, and thus karaoke skills. Also, stick around till the end because I have a very special Christmas giveaway. My conversation and lesson with Tom Oliver happened on November 23rd, 2020.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing this, Tom Oliver, my vocal coach of, what are we at now, like 15 years I probably came to you? Maybe 14. I think I was 16 or 17.
No, I think you were 15. I thought you were 15 or 16, but...
Yeah, it could have been. When it was basically right when Steve Mitchell left the band, I came to his vocal coach, which is you, and
yes,
I've gained a lot of knowledge from you, and the reason I guess I should tell guests why I wanted to have you on is we record our lessons, and I listen back to them later, and sometimes you'll throw in a lot of vocal philosophies that I kind of go over my head sometimes at the lesson, and then when I'm listening to the lesson that we recorded as I'm driving down, on tour to my shows,
yeah,
it'll hit me like, oh, now I get what he's talking about. Like, that's such a great image that makes so much sense. So I figured this could be a good podcast episode.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me, and I wish you all the very best with this. It's a great project. I think, we need more community efforts, especially now, and everyone reaching out. It's a good project, and I'm sure people will tune in. You're a very interesting artist, and you are a fellow who very few of my students are like you in that you have drive and you have perseverance, because when you first came to me, you were really in the rough, but the voice was a good voice, and you're a very, very tall person. So to get you to stand up straight, I can remember just getting you to stand tall and be able to use your breath to live rather than even to sing. And I shouldn't start talking about singing by talking about breath, because I don't talk about breath as much. A lot of teachers talk about breath. I talk about the instrument. So that's one of the keys to Voice Concepts productivity, and I think success, is that if you have an authentic approach with every individual who comes into the studio, you can reflect hopefully what they need to address as their primary focus for singing and developing their instrument. With you, it was really exciting because I could see with every lesson that you focused on your recordings and you worked on specifically organizing your voice, which was great. And now this is a beautiful voice. It's an excellent voice, and I always enjoy hearing you. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for being on, and that's a great way to put it, that everyone is kind of, I guess, a unique instrument, and you really bring out their authentic voice, and that's what we finally got out of me, and it's been a game changer.
Oh yeah, that's true. And I believe that, at least in my experience of, nearly 40 years of teaching voice, that you learn more from every student if you approach it with this open sort of mind and say, okay, so what do they authentically sound like, and how can I as a teacher impress upon them what to do to improve their flexibility, to improve their tonal quality, many things, but more importantly is their authentic sound. And having, you just said that was a key part for you. Well, I have found in this many years that, rock voices are born. Opera voices are born. Pop singers, they're born. The voices, the instrument is only two small vocal cords in your throat. And they're half the size of your little fingernail. And the thickness and the actual genetics of it will determine what kind of voice you can develop. And you actually have a classical voice, but had no idea that your voice actually did that. Now your voice spins with a full function, which you could use as even for Mozart, but you prefer to use it in a contemporary rock sort of style, and it will serve you there too. But you can develop the voice into a full function, legit, what we call a legit instrument, and that's what you've done. And it's a very beautiful voice, and I like how you use it too. But if I had any strong influence, I'd have thrown you into a voice major at a university. It's a legit
thanks.
voice. Yeah, beautiful voice.
Yeah, I always think I still have a long way to go, and I have my bad days still for sure. But when I put on our lessons and I really dive in and focus on training my voice to be authentic and listening to everything that we do, I come into this authentic zone where my mouth isn't opening as much. I'm not shouting. I'm not getting sore throats, and I find that getting a lot of sleep and being in shape helps that as well. But I mean,
sure.
those two things are going to help you zone in and be in the zone for anything that you're after. So
I think that says a lot. Like, it's how you view also. Everyone looks through their artistic life in a unique lens, and that's what's exciting about working with artists from all different areas, from rock right through to opera, and there's not an awful lot of difference in the actual approach, but there is a huge difference in the artistic lens that they view their expression. And I've always been highly respectful of people who get out there and write their own things and create such unique, creative, what do I want to say, compositions. That's really really challenging, and I don't find that appealing whatsoever. But I just work with the voice, so that you got out there and you really pumped out a lot of music. You talked about one thing as well that touched on health and rest, and of course we're better all round if we can get enough sleep and eat well, and of course the lifestyle is very, very important for everyone who uses a voice professionally, whether it be a singer or just a public speaker. But more than not, rest, I think, is key. And if a person goes, I always say, always leave the studio or your practices wanting to do more, not leaving because you're tired. There's no sense of going into a studio and singing for 15 hours and be a dead duck at the end of it,
Yeah, or only being able to keep the first 5 hours of those 15 hours because you realize later the last 10 hours were useless.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know how people do it. But, it's the same thing. You train a voice to its strength by repetitious approach in skills that are more like scales or flexibility exercises using the voice, and getting the voice to do unusual acrobatics, I call it, that help you sustain a longer period of maybe recording time or whatever. If you look at an opera singer, how many years they train basically their entire life, but they're training these two little pieces in their throat to sing to 3,000-4,000 people without a microphone, and cutting up to like 120 instruments. So there has to be, the voice is resilient, but you have to work at it. You have to train it to get to that level. And do, as well as you found out, like I can remember the day you walked into the studio and you actually released a vibrato. I went, what happened? The voice actually spun into a vibrato, and it was so beautiful. And when you have that full function of the instrument, you can reduce the amounts of resonance you want, so you can give the rock peacock sound, whatever you want, right?
Yeah, that really introduced the freedom in my voice and kind of corrected a lot of the pitch issues I was having too.
Absolutely.
And volume. And most of it came through, like you said, acrobatics, the agility. The faster we would do scales, the more I couldn't help myself but to release that vibrato finally.
Yeah. And I mean, organizing it. Remember how you work so hard to get your jaw still and your tongue released. I find people who use their voice in contemporary format, they often have a lot of tension in the glottis area and the root of the tongue area. But the freest of the rock singers do not. Their mouth is wide open and their tongue's just flying, So it doesn't matter whether you're singing rock or pop or music theater or folk or opera. That has to be one of the key points about getting everything organized here so that you can access your voice more freely.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest reasons I wanted to bring this to the podcast finally, is I think that anybody who's in a band, trying to start a band, trying to be a singer, or like myself, ends up being forced to be the singer, it's important to recognize, especially in rock, that you don't have to strain and yell to project and to create that aggressive emotion. The aggressive emotion comes from the content and the emotion behind it.
And the intention of it, yes. But you said a great thing. Like, it sounds, when you hear a very good rock singer, it's not that they're making a loud sound. There's nothing noisy about it. It's very refined and very clean. The very same way with any singer. If you can get that clean core sound, that naked voice, to be really seamless, then you're doing something right. And that takes a little bit of work. But if you do it 15, 20 minutes 3 times a day, you just think about your voice, focus on some exercises, you'll start to reduce that over passionate. I always say it's passion beyond ability. They want to do it so badly that they'll physically get involved beyond necessity.
Necessary, yeah. I'm definitely still a victim of that, and
yeah. Well,
but the more I do those scales, and the more I work on agility, and training the voice properly, and using vibrato, the more I can sing, and the louder I can sing. And it's funny that when I was on Warped Tour, which is like a festival all summer long, driving 7-8 hours a night sometimes, getting no sleep, the thing that would keep me awake on the drive overnight, because I'm literally running on like 2 nights of all-nighters, is I would do the vocal lessons so that I wouldn't fall asleep at the wheel. And I'm doing these vocal lessons for 5-6 hours, and I'm thinking, how have I sang so long? How am I going to sing tomorrow?
Yeah.
And my voice was never in such great shape, live especially, because I was just running these lessons. So it's funny, if you train properly, you can, the more you sing, the more you can sing.
Yeah, everybody has their their point of view on how much they need to train. But in your case, I'm glad it kept you awake. Just on that, when you look at doing exercises and you look at what is it that I want to do? If I'm an opera singer, I need to do some certain things. If I'm a rock singer, I need to have this. Well, the foundation is exactly the same. You've got to get down to the core of the voice, and that core releases all of the voice that you want. And when you say louder, I don't like using the word louder, but more dynamic and more resonance. You can definitely attain more resonance with, you're not just like I, but I, you get more, you can pull more into the body of the resonation. I mean, we resonate dominantly in the mass. And the more we train that, so if you're driving the car and you're just doing your core voice, those core voice exercises, the I, you can do that forever,
Yeah.
I mean, as an opera singer, when I was training, we would do, I would do that crazy exercise without breath. And I think we've done it in our classes.
Yeah.
With breath, without breath. And it's the least attractive part of the voice, but it's training the instrument. And that's where a lot of singers get into a big confusing time with their voice, because they feel they have to sing or produce a sound that they want to hear, and they really have to look at just developing the instrument. It's an instrument in our throat, and if you have an artist intention, if you're driven to be a singer or some sort of vocal artist, you will become, but you mustn't always listen to what you want to hear. You have to feel the voice, train it down into the instrument, down into the core voice, I mean.
Yeah, and if you are going to listen to anything, don't be afraid to listen to yourself, is what I've grown to realize.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a few lessons ago where I was showing you one of my new songs, and I ended up putting auto-tune on it, not the version that you heard, but you were like, this sounds great. This is a high A and you're hitting it just fine. And I was like, well, it's funny. I put auto-tune on it, and this came up in my last podcast too with Cole. It's funny that sometimes just using pitch correction could build your confidence, and that ended up happening too. And I ended up accepting my authentic voice because of that, because I wasn't able to if I was like slightly off pitch, but once you use pitch correction, you're like, okay, this is what my voice sounds like. I can recreate that, no problem. It's my own.
Yeah, that's right. It's your own. God bless the technology for recording artists, because they can do that. But you can't imagine being on stage in an opera. You can't have that happening. There's no mic to sing in to get auto-tuned.
Yeah.
So I always think of the story back in it was back in the 80s, and there was a very up and coming South American tenor, and he was making his debut at the Metropolitan Opera, and he sang one passage. This is his debut in the world's most famous. He made one passage flat, and that's where his career stopped.
Wow.
Yeah. Not invited back. So, I mean, it's tremendous what they can do in studios today, and I'm sure that, if it helps you accept your authentic sound, the problem that bothers you is if it's flat or sharp. That's bothering you. There are lots of singers out there that doesn't bother, because I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And yet there's a reason why you're not staying on pitch. It's usually a tension somewhere that you don't need. Anyway, are you doing more recording now? Or are you?
Yeah, so since I've been home, I've been diving back into the demos, mostly editing a lot of what has been recorded. I already did drums for a bunch of songs.
Right.
But I finished 4 new songs, and they're in mixing now. And I don't know when or how they're going to be released, but I've got those in the vault, and I'm just trying to write more songs and figure out what I even want to sound like, or if it's going to be one project or maybe two or three now. I'm a little all over the place as far as branding and marketing.
Well, you've got the voice to do anything you want to do. But I often think of, everyone looks at creating their own music in their own special way. A lot of people look at the text that they want to express, right? And I think that if we don't look at the text, we're missing out on a very big part of developing your authentic voice as well. I can remember my father used to say to me, he'd say, well, speak up, you've got a voice. What do you think? And I've never forgotten it. Like, your opinion really counts. Your take on the world really counts. We need artists to get out there and make even more poignant statements about what's going on before our very eyes, and young artists such as yourself are, you're good. You collaborate and you get together and create these wonderful things. Even, what drives me crazy is people still insist on writing music that's a love song. Well, I guess it's important. Maybe it's because of my age. I don't really feel the need to hear more love song. but I wish there were more. I wish there was more of that 70s sort of action happening more in rock music. And I mean, maybe it is, and maybe I'm just not in touch with it too much, but I wish there was more sort of you know what I'm trying to say. It's not just political, but making a statement, an authentic statement about our day and age. We've got
like a social angst. I've tried. It's really difficult to do it authentically. Maybe it's just the genre that I'm into. It's just so much easier to build, create, and sell a love song,
or a not love song, or
right.
I mean, yes,
or
I think
personal. It's so much easier to have a personal issue to throw on the table than something that's like, hey, we're all in this together. As soon as you bring that to a song, it's like, next for some reason.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, maybe you just haven't got enough age behind you, because I was listening to an interview. Oh, who was it? Bruce Springsteen. Last week he was on one of the night shows, and he was born to raise these questions.
Right.
He couldn't stand in front of an audience without bringing up his point of view on the world state, and I think that's. I think it's important that we all find what's really our initial need as artists. But I've listened to some of your stuff. It's symbolic, you write also symbolically. So it's not just dealing with one person and the relationship with that. It's a relationship of you with the people around you. That's making a statement, I think. So I don't want to disqualify your work.
No. I mean, if anything, I've veered away from the love song too many times, in a lot of people's opinion, I would think. And that's because, I mean, from 20 to 30, I was pretty much just a single nomadic dude. And so, I mean, I never really thought of that stuff. If anything, I felt more like an athletic performer, and my lifestyle was more of, hey, I had this dream and I worked really hard to get it, and this is what I've been through to get it. That tends to be what my songwriting has been over the last decade, for the most part. So I just naturally tend to write that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's interesting. I mean, everybody comes from their own sort of community and their own experience growing up, and it's great to have every voice heard. Throughout all your travels, I mean, you traveled. How many times did you actually get down to the States? So many times.
I would say in the high 20s, low 30s, probably.
Wow, that's a lot of traveling. That's a lot of voice lessons on the CD.
Yeah, for sure. It's fun to listen back to like 2007, 2008 CDs that I still have kicking around, and I'm just like, who was I trying to sound like? This is like the MySpace days for sure.
Yeah. Well, I get a kick out of it because I have so many students who say the same thing. They listen back to their first recording or their first lesson and they go, "Holy man! I mean, how it's changed! You know, it's just so different." I have a funny story that about a month ago I got a message from one of my past students who's living in England. She's fantastic. Haley Roscoe is her name, and she is a jazz performer, an innovator. She writes a lot of songs, and lives in London, England. So she's having a good career. Well, she ran into somebody at some occasion. It was either an audition or something like that, and she heard them warming up, and they were warming up below the deep and dark blue sea, and she goes, "Wait a minute." And she approached them and she said, "Where did you get that warm up?" And he said, he said, "Years ago from my voice teacher in Canada." And I thought, she said, "I use that one too." It's very interesting.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. And, you know, I'm here always if I can do anything to support your podcast career. I'm happy to do it. And if you have any friends who'd like to come and spend an hour chirping, I'm here too. So that's fine. I have a lot of students and I always make room for more.
Before we get into these vocal exercises, as Tom just mentioned, he's taught so many students that it's common for us to sometimes coincidentally bump into each other all over the world. I should have brought up the story of how I landed a huge studio gig singing as a voiceover for a character in a Disney movie. I'm contractually not allowed to say what movie it is, so I'll leave that for you to figure out. But long story short, when the writer and producer of the soundtrack contacted me and asked if I had any vocal training, and I said yes, I trained with a guy named Tom Oliver, it basically sealed the deal as he too trains with Tom. Anyway, it was an amazing experience and a huge stroke of luck, but not really, because this industry tends to shrink down way smaller as you go. Like how I came across Voice. I met the CEO at NAMM 2017, didn't know anything about them, had an amazing conversation, such an amazing person. Since then, they've supported my voice and all my crazy ventures, including this podcast, and I haven't got a sore throat since. And just one more crazy coincidence I should have mentioned in the conversation. I brought a bottle of this Voice throat spray to a lesson for Tom, and he was already using it. And some of his students were already using it too. So get your all-natural Voice products for 15% off today using this link right here. I'll drop it in the description as well. They make great little stocking stuffers, and your voice will thank you after all that Christmas caroling. And stick around, because at the end of these vocal exercises, I'm going to tell you how you could win your very own free bottle of Voice throat spray. Now let's get singing! Yeah, thank you for doing this. And I did kind of want to try and make this a little bit of a lesson for the viewers as well, to see some of the things that we do. So any exercises like the I, or anything that... Sure.
Oh, okay. Deal. Oh, I'm happy. Now I can talk. I don't feel nervous. Okay, so you know, you can just stand tall, shoulder blades back, and do the core sound. Just tiny core sound. Yeah, that's a little too much. Too much authenticity there. Right behind on the bone of the hard palate. That's it. You do then pull into your authentic, and then into a full function. Yes, and here. Yeah, very interesting. You know, because we have these these bone edges, like the hard, soft palate, right? The edge of the bone and the hard, soft palate is very similar to the bone at the base of the skull. It's the same shape and the same as the top of the sternum. When you did that third one, it was already coming into here. We don't need it that far for contemporary singer. You want to sing into this area. Keep it nice and bright. That's better. Not more, but bright. That's good.
Yeah.
Do it here. Excellent.
Took a second to find it.
I exercise. Make sure the second one is just authentic, so it's right there on the edge of the hard, soft palate. That's right. Have you ever thought about releasing the vibrato on the top note?
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, that's where I would go. I would start working on that.
Yeah.
Another way of doing this, you know that long-faced hum, right? Or the NG. You can go. Yeah. And really feel like you pull and flow. Yes, your tongue is on the edge of the hard, soft palate, not in the pharynx.
I think so.
Yes, and do it very quickly. That's it. Now. And sing me on the same sensation.
Me.
Yes. Mea. Mea.
Mea.
Yes.
Mea. Mea.
And do long face hum. Sing mea.
Me. Mea.
Excellent. And go. My. Good. Good. Can you give me a little bit more of the peacock? Now pull that into a little fuller function. Ma. Excellent. And again. Wow.
It's hard to get it quick right off the cusp.
Yeah, the high C's. It's a high C.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Just yes. Let your chin relax. Your neck. Yeah, just get out of your head a bit, eh? Excellent. That's it. Move that tongue.
My I.
Yes. Yes. Good for you. Me.
Me.
That's it. Let it pull. Unfold the vowel. E to A to A.
Me.
Good. And
Me.
can you make that a brighter A vowel?
Me.
Yeah. Me.
Me.
That's it.
Me.
Excellent. It's a beautiful voice, Michael.
Thanks. Me.
Good. Well, not really. Sorry. That last note kind of fell out.
Yeah.
Really feel the action.
Me.
That's right. Nice and naked. Me. Ah.
Me.
Beautiful. And me. That's right.
Smaller.
My. And my. I have just got a notice on my recording here that I have to free up space. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, anyway, this has been a blast. I didn't know that I was going to have an opportunity to work with your voice.
Yeah, no, I hope people are inspired to sing along to those exercises and see what they can do for their voice with them.
Yeah, especially that high C that you did. Very good. Very good.
Well, yeah, and
It's always the exit of your passaggio, eh? It's always the exit. That A flat G. It's always the one. It has a muscle memory here,
Yeah, that's always the part I have trouble freeing up, and especially if I'm like trying to sing my own stuff. It's as soon as I get in that area, I'm just like, why isn't it working? And I just push from all the wrong muscles, and I'm back in bad habits. But
Pavarotti said Luciano Pavarotti. We had the opportunity of working with him when I was in university, and one of the men, a tenor, said, "Well, when I'm on that big high note, and it's awfully hard. How do I actually stop it?" He said, 2 things. Don't go there very often. And the second thing, shut the cake hole. So I've always said this to you because I know you like hanging around up there and singing up there. But it is a very good part of your voice. It just doesn't need to be there. You don't have to be there a lot. Try to find less time, more time below it, or above it. You can even go above it. How was your falsetto?
Yeah,
Huh? That's right. Get it spinning.
yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Do you remember how hard that was for you?
Yeah,
When you were a kid?
the falsetto has been a really easy thing for me to figure out. It's everything above that high E F break. I can kind of sort it out. But yeah, definitely all the agility and the acrobatics have created that freedom up there too, and on the E and F. It's just a matter of.
And also, you have to remember, Michael, like you are a dominant. You are auditory dominant, right? You would listen to your voice and analyze and think about it. And I've always tried to get you to feel your voice much more. Feel the instrument in your mask, and that's everybody wrestles with that. But to really focus the voice onto a dominant sense, like feeling it or seeing it, rather than always listening to it, because that's really detrimental. And I just want to fool around a little bit with that passaggio, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I want you to go. Say for me, day, but small mouth, day, yes, excellent. Now, what is, that's not falsetto.
No, it's like a head voice.
It's a head voice dominant.
Yeah.
And that's what has to come into those notes more.
Right. Yeah, as soon as you said keep your mouth closed, I'm forced to use the correct muscles. Yeah.
Okay. There, done.
Right.
I'm going to shut this cake hole. Thank you very much again for inviting me to be part of this podcast. I've never done one before, and I have to admit that I felt a little bit nervous, but always a pleasure to work with you, and always a pleasure to see you. And I hope I have the privilege of working with you again on a podcast. It'd be great.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. And if anyone watching feels like they want to improve their voice, I'm going to leave Tom's email in the description. Contact him. He's doing Zoom lessons during this quarantine time, so wherever you are in the world, take advantage of this amazing teacher that I've been lucky to work with. Yeah.
Listen, I just did my first Zoom lesson to India. It was most exciting. Yeah, most exciting. A classical singer actually in India. Anyway, take care. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah.
Mr. Tom Oliver, ladies and gentlemen. I love how excited he gets when I ask him if we can work on some vocal exercises. I remember I used to hit up Tom very last minute for a lesson right before a tour kickoff, and he'd add one more evening slot at the end of his 13-hour day teaching at Sheridan College. And he'd still be passionately present, totally stoked to improve my voice and get rid of all my dysphonia. He's even come out to several Rosedale shows in and around Toronto and Hamilton and helped me assess and grow my show. That is just the kind of coach Tom Oliver is. Teaching is his why, and he's clearly been doing the thing that he loves doing most for almost 40 years. So, if you'd like to improve your voice wherever you may be in the world, email Tom Oliver at voice.concepts@outlook.com. And as promised, here's how you could win your very own bottle of Vocalese throat spray. If you're not already watching this on YouTube, head to this episode's YouTube link. It's in the description and on the @State of My Art podcast Instagram page bio. Click subscribe to the YouTube page if you haven't already. Then type "I needs vocal ease" or something like that in the comments. I'm giving away 3 free bottles, so the first 3 subscribed commenters each get a free bottle. I'll then get in touch with you on how we can get that free Vocalese bottle to you. Vocalese is covering the shipping costs, so this gift is truly completely free. However, Rudolph apparently has COVID this year, so your address has to be in North America to win. Sorry. And that is all for this episode. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I'll see you next week for another episode of State of My Art Podcast.